Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the show. Tough times never last, but tough people do. I'm Michael Kazilny, and thank you very much for watching on this lovely Monday night. If you're going through some tough issues at home, I hope things get better very soon. I know there's a lot of people going through separations, and that's very difficult. A lot of blokes don't see their kids. Intervention orders, and there's a lot of people suffering from mental health problems, anxiety and depression, and God bless you, I hope you get better. You know, this show's been going for about 7 years. What I like about it is it's not rehearsed. People ring up and they want to share their stories, and they're real people and they're very authentic. There's no bullshit about the people, and half the time I don't even know what they're going to talk about, and that's the beauty about it all. But what I like about the people who do come on the couch, they're fair income, they're life's givers, not takers, and they want to make a difference to people. And we've got the lovely Kira. Hello.
Hi.
Shake hands. And
Thanks,
Steve.
Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Now, these guys aren't together, I heard before, so...
We're both married.
I'm married.
But you're both volunteers.
Yes, that's right.
And I take my hat off to you because a lot of people are quite selfish, aren't they? You know, a lot of people want to line their own pockets and it's all about me, 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 me. But you guys are very giving.
Yeah, well, I think definitely, like, I started on the soup van when I was at university. I think uni students are the greatest kind of volunteers half the time. They don't have money to give, but they've got a lot of time that they can volunteer, and they've also got a lot of energy for positive change in society, and so I think they're great volunteers.
I don't know too much about... I do. I mean, the Henry Nissens and the what's the other name? You know, Father Bob Maguire. You know, they're also helping the homeless. Where's the soup van where you guys volunteer?
We volunteered on the Fitzroy soup van. And, it came out of Flemington Road, out of St Matthew Talbot soup van, which came out of the. I'm trying to remember. No, it wasn't the name of the house in. I've forgotten. Anyway, bloody...
Started out the front of the Fitzroy Town Hall, I think, but with St Vincent de Paul, which sponsors a few vans. But there's about 10 that are running throughout the city at the moment.
All right.
All over.
So most people go out partying and go for dinner on Saturday nights, and you guys spend, what, 2-3 hours there?
Yeah, well, I don't think half the people in the city of Melbourne know that there are hundreds of volunteers that are making sandwiches and soup in the back streets every single night.
Is it good tucker, Steve? Good tucker?
Well, in my time, we did sandwiches and we did soup.
Yeah.
And but the tucker's not so much the issue. The issue is more connecting with the people.
Right.
And you know, a lot of the people when I was doing the soup van would actually become friends with these people and do take them out on to events in their own time on the weekends or at other times during the week. They would actually become, you know, permanent friends with them.
It's a community, I think. It's a world on a street corner, someone said to me once.
The soup van was like an introduction to them.
A lot of the viewers watching, you know, they just finished the races. They you know, spent money on their $1,000 gowns and their aftershave and their perfumes, and you know, just come back from their Thailand and Bali trip, maybe business class. Tell the viewers that there's a lot of homeless people who can't even afford a meal.
Absolutely, and but I suppose what struck me about the people that I met on the van was the diversity that they came from. There were a lot of professionals, lawyers, doctors, accountants, engineers.
Well, just burnt out.
Yeah.
The various things that happened. I was really interested before when you said that you know, if someone's just been through a breakup.
Yeah.
What shocked me was the number of men who were homeless as a result of, well, you know, I'd say the judge or whatever, the system awarding the house to the mother, and the husband gets turfed out because he can look after himself, and ostensibly, and we would meet them on the streets. And
that's very true, viewers, isn't it? Some of these intervention orders. I mean, there's a good. They're sort of issued for a good reason, but quite often they're also abused. You know, people split up and. You know, one partner hooks up with another one, and all of a sudden there's this intervention orders. Some of the stuff's fabricated, but you can't go back home.
Yeah, that's right.
And you know, and all of a sudden you can't eat, and they end up coming to the van.
That's right, and I think in many cases it feeds on itself, because a lot of these people, you would talk to them and they would say, I lived in a great big house in Kew or Toorak or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're out on the street, and as a result of it, often they lose their job. and because they can't get to work presentable or whatever, or there's various other issues going on, and their whole life just falls apart, and then they lose their confidence.
Yeah.
And then they're just stuck on the street.
And Steve's so right, viewers, isn't it? I sort of living around Brighton, I've seen blokes who are worth, one bloke $26 million. You know, he had the ego and the watches and the cars, and you know, he was sort of telling me what to do in the courts. He was one of the clients, but you know, a few years later, he lost it all. He was minus $50,000, and it's amazing how impermanent life is. You know, every day I wake up and I think, well, it's a day closer to death, and we never know what day we're going to die, what we're going to die of. So every day we should really live life like it could be our last day. When I was a policeman, I used to give probably about 10 death messages every month. You'd knock on the door, you know, young Johnny died, or your husband suicided, your missus got killed by a train, and you know, shock, horror. But every day, tens of thousands of people die all over the world. So really appreciate where you are right now, because it's not going to last forever. All the good stuff never lasts, and all the bad stuff never lasts either. Does it, Kira?
No.
And that's what sort of we tell our clients when they're going through some really deep issues and they're close to suicidal. You just say, look, it's all very impermanent, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think as well, like Steve was saying, there's a lot of lonely people. You don't have to be disadvantaged. You can just be lonely, disadvantaged emotionally, I guess. But there is quite a sad story of...
lonely people.
Yeah, of lonely people where volunteers are often their sort of only connection to other human beings. And I think once on the van, there's a story that we put into a book that we're writing about the soup vans where...
well, that's right, yes, the book.
Just slip that in there.
Yeah, well, we certainly... The super... Well, that's amazing. And this is... the book's coming out on Monday.
On Monday, yes. We're having a big launch at the Fitzroy Town Hall.
Is that amazing?
And it's called Soup Van Stories Over a Polystyrene Cup.
What's it called?
Soup Van Stories Over a Polystyrene Cup.
That's a terrific idea. How long have you worked on the soup vans for?
I've been on them for a couple of years now. I started at university, then I went overseas, and then I started again when I came back. So about 2 years altogether.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Amazing?
Maybe. I don't know. I think you guys and the veteran vannies who I've met through doing the soup van are quite amazing. There's some people that have been there, you know, volunteering for 30 years or so, and their stories are in this book, and it's just incredible to hear what they used to go through back in the 80s and what's changed, you know. I mean, it hasn't changed in the sense that people still need a community and they need to connect to other human beings, but it's changed. I think you guys used to drive around and actually seek people out in the back streets.
We might hear some of those stories after the next break, Steve, and we'll have you on shortly on again as well, but tough times never last. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to the show. Hope you're having a lovely Monday night. If you're suffering at the moment, remember, often there's nothing to fix. Just go through the fire. Whatever you're going through, tens of thousands of other people have gone through there before. So if you're alive, there's always going to be problems. And they say the longer you've been on campus, the more problems you're going to experience. Financial problems, the stress, the anxiety, the loneliness, the relationship problems. And at the end, death will just come and wipe you out and it's all over. So try to enjoy every day, spice it up a bit, and really go out there and try to show a bit of loving kindness to others, because it seems to me that the world is getting a bit more selfish. Everyone's running around doing their own thing, trying to line their own pockets, and it's all about me, me, me. I've been running around for the last 5 or 10 years with this wonderful me filter. Every time I start talking about myself or my travels or my stuff, I just zip up. Try that for a week, the wonderful me filter. We've got the lovely Kira on the couch and the lovely Karen now. She's been replaced. Thanks, Karen.
Nice to meet you, Michael.
And you guys don't need the wonderful me filter because you're both beautiful ladies in the service of others, and that's a really great thing.
Look, it has been a great thing. I think I started volunteering in my early 20s, and that's when I worked on the soup van that we're speaking about with the book launch. I started back in 1989, I think, when I was mid-20s, and worked for 5 years on the van before I actually became quite exhausted, because the van, for me, we used to stay out till 3 or 4 in the morning searching for homeless people that were sleeping rough, and trying to do that with a full-time job. Basically, after 5 years, it was quite
Karen,
exhausting.
So you weren't just stationary, you were actually looking for people to help?
Yeah, the city was very different then. I think the van was quite different as far as we used to walk through a lot of the lanes. There were lots of squats, particularly in the North Melbourne area. We would find people sleeping rough under trees in quite a number of the city parks and in the laneways. There was a lot less activity in the city on a weeknight back in the 1980s, early 90s. So, you know, the city wasn't as vibrant probably as it is as far as it is now.
I think they found someone as well who was sleeping standing up in a phone booth, and one day frozen so solid that the vannies had to take him home.
Must be shock and disbelief. You know, these people are so lonely out and about. They're sleeping in the street, and all of a sudden, you know, they see lovely ladies or you know, gentlemen coming up. It must be a great surprise.
I think after a while, obviously, you get to know quite a number of the people that are sleeping rough in the city, and they would expect and they would wait for you with a sandwich and a warm cup of soup. The quality of the food, as we've spoken about before, was probably not really what they were seeking. It was more someone that was checking up on them to make sure that, you know, where they were sleeping rough on the banks of the Yarra. This is pre the Crown Casino, and we used to trawl that southern bank of the Yarra River. There were quite a number of people that used to sleep rough. And, you know, just to look at the complex now, that this is a complete entertainment facility where people were just sleeping on the banks of the river back in those days. It's certainly, the city has changed.
And I know what a lot of the viewers are thinking. I speak to people sort of on the quiet, and you know, we walk past people in the street begging for money, and they say, look, those people deserve where they are. You know, most of them are crooks anyway, on drugs. But that's not always the case, is it? People it's a very judgmental society. I see this chap outside Melbourne Magistrates quite often. He's got a, you know, he's homeless, and he's got his hat there. And I just look at people walking past, lawyers, professional people. The homeless are often ignored, aren't they? I wonder why.
I think probably because most of society find homelessness quite confrontational, and unfortunately a lot of our homeless also have significant mental health issues, so people are scared to actually approach or to engage with them because of, you know,
nothing wrong with slipping $20 in or $10 when you're walking past, you know, but you see a lot of these wealthy blokes, you know, avoiding the homeless person or the person, you know, wanting to get a bit of money. It's quite,
that's why we wrote the book, because we want people to understand that life's not always about choices. It can be about circumstances too, what happens to you.
Circumstances. I mean, there's a lot of generous people out there. There's a lot of good people, mostly good, I think, but there's also a lot of people, it's all about them. And I think in Buddhism they say, if we try to make ourselves happy, we're going to become quite miserable. But if you make other people happy, then, you know, that reflects. And they say one of the things to make yourself happy is volunteering.
Definitely.
Is that right?
No, volunteering is certainly a way to feel engaged in the community. I now obviously no longer work on the soup van, but I'm still involved in volunteering with an organisation called Fair Share, and they recycle waste food and produce meals that actually go out onto the soup van and into a lot of our welfare organisations to distribute to families that are obviously in need. There's a significant number of families, working families now, that actually can't afford the cost of living. In Melbourne is quite significant and has risen quite dramatically.
And whether they just need to get the food.
Could you both maybe think of a really compelling story over the years that you volunteered where somebody, because of circumstances, has ended up homeless and ended up at the soup van? Can you think of a...
Yeah, well, definitely. A man that I know quite well now, Miroslav Paunov, came from Serbia, and actually the way that he was born was quite incredible. When his mum was pregnant with him at the start of the Second World War, his father walked into the kitchen covered totally in blood, and his mother said, you know, what happened to you? And he said, oh, I've shot the next door neighbour because I thought they were stealing from us. And his mother went into labour right there on the kitchen floor, lost so much blood, had him premature, died right there and then. His father was taken to jail, and he was raised by the Red Cross. And you just think, like, beginning your life like that, and later on he was abused by the neighbour across the road, and a whole lot of string of things that happened. But to begin your life in such a way and then try and recover from that, and then also changed countries completely after the war.
Yeah.
You know, he was going through an incredible amount of, you know, and had no support network whatsoever.
No.
So things like that just make you realise, you know, and I sat down with him and we talked through his story and I transcribed it and then read it back to him. And that was an incredible experience where he heard his own story, realised that someone else had written it down, understood it, and that it mattered, and he sort of stood up and danced around his living room and said, you know, I feel like some rocks have been lifted from inside me.
Yeah.
I think that's the power of sharing
yeah,
stories.
quite often people don't listen. And Karen, a couple of...
For me, one gentleman, a boy actually, when I first met Robert, he was he lived in the Atherton Gardens with his family, and he used to come to the soup van, which was at that time our first stop was in opposite in King William Street, just opposite the Atherton Gardens, and he would come to the van to get his sandwiches to go to school the next day. And I remember celebrating, you know, many milestones with Robert. I was at his 18th birthday. I was there for the birth of his first child, the christening of his first child, and unfortunately was at his funeral, which was at All Saints 3 or 4 years ago now. So there was a long breath. I lost contact with him, obviously, after I left the soup van, but through the network realised that he'd passed away, and I, you know, went to the ceremony where I'd first met Robert, which was at All Saints in.
Did he have an addiction?
No, not that I know of.
No.
Robert didn't suffer from an addiction. He actually then went to work at St Mary's House of Welcome, which is in Brunswick Street, Fitzroy. So he actually ended up in the volunteering, you know, and he had a very hard start to his life.
All right, we might hear some stories of inspiration, how you guys help out after the next break, but it's Tough Times Never Last. We'll be back very shortly with these lovely volunteers from the soup van. Welcome back to the show. Thank you very much for the pleasure of your company once again. Monday night in Melbourne. There's even people in New Zealand watching us now. So I've had a few phone calls from NZ. I always thought New Zealand was a place with no depression, but a lot of people suffering there as well, going through, you know, the same problems we're all going through. I just got back from New York 3 weeks ago, and I always wanted to catch the subway at midnight, you know, just to have a look around, and you know, a lot of sadness there as well, a lot of happy people as well, but it seems to me that people are getting more down, more depressed. 1 in 4 is depressed, 1 in 10 wants to suicide. They say in 25 years' time, the normal condition of the human being will be to be depressed and not happy. That's quite amazing. Oh, we've got all 3 of you on now. Wow.
Hi.
Wow, and I think that's why you're so happy, Steve, because you're volunteering, and you know, they say your rewards in life will match your service to mankind.
Yeah, I think people always used to say, because we worked on the van many, many years ago, is that, you know, how fantastic, you know, that you're giving so much to the community.
It's
but
nice.
In reality, I think I certainly gained far more from getting to know Melbourne and getting to know the clients on the street rather than...
It improves your life as well,
Yes.
I think.
And I think we can all feel it, because all that lovely work you're doing, you take that into your social life, you take it into your families, you know. Like sitting with you, it's so beautiful, but can you imagine sitting, you know, someone's trying to sell you something, you know, a used car salesman or something, they don't look in your eye and they're ripping people off. There's still many people like that. It's all about them. You know, selfish and selfless. You guys are very selfless, helping people without any ulterior motive, which is a beautiful thing. You know, everybody wants something these days, don't they?
I love that about the van, is that you've got lots of time. And these people aren't used to being given time a lot of the time to be able to just talk about their lives or ask for some support.
That's right. I remember being a policeman, and I was quite young, and I had a bit of an ego, folks, you know, in St Kilda in the early 80s, and I was the same. I was a prick of a man. I didn't have given them much time, you know. I'd check their wallets, I'd, you know, stand there, do this, do that. Don't call me mate, call me, you know. So the ego has to, we have to smash that on the ground and just be a bit more authentic, both in speech and action, you know. But I look back in the days when I was a cop, and, you know, and I was quite, I was kind-hearted, but I didn't give people enough time, which is important, isn't it? Because everybody deserves a bit of time.
Everyone, certainly everyone does deserve time. And you're right, I think society, you know, with social media and things are moving very quickly as far as technology, and it doesn't necessarily improve our communication between people. I think in some ways social media is actually quite detrimental to communication, because
you lose that face-to-face and that connection with people that you get when you can like grab hold of them and say,
it's a nice way of getting together. Karen, you were saying a story before off air that you were handcuffed to a bed. What was happening there?
I think the question that you'd asked was there any violence when we were working on the soup van? And I was in a boarding house in Gertrude Street, Fitzroy, and I was handcuffed by a gentleman and I remained quite calm, and he was talking to me about his glass etching skills that he'd learnt in Pentridge. And so I sat there with him for 10 minutes listening to this. I had a male soup van volunteer sitting behind me, and I eventually said to him, look, we need to go and hand soup and sandwiches on to someone else. Do you mind handcuffing me? And he was quite compliant. He said, yes, that's fine. And unfortunately, the week after this event, he actually murdered the man downstairs over a $5 football bet, which was quite confrontational at the time. A week after this.
So he's obviously now locked away somewhere.
This happened many, many years ago.
They don't get much these days, do they?
I don't know the situation,
but
that's really scary to think that you were in the room and that.
But I'd known him for quite some time, and I think people become.
He's probably out already. They don't get much these days, do they?
Well, I'm not sure.
What about that bloke who killed his wife and then he became a manager at one of the big? Did you read that in the Herald Sun the other day?
Yes.
What was it? What, Dimmies or something? General manager.
I think that's correct.
Killed his wife, got a good lawyer.
But like you say, people change. You know, there's always scope for rehabilitation.
I wonder, folks, whether people change. Well, I think they do, but I think circumstantial. You know. Yeah.
I mean, I think you've got to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
You know, they're driven to...
That's a very good point, Steve. We can all be judgmental, but once somebody's done their punishment, you know...
But, I mean, I also, I mean, you know, you're saying that they don't get much these days, but I think that a lot of time in jail might be detrimental.
Yeah.
And, I mean, personally, I'd rather see...
Especially as a young person as well, like juvenile detention and things. You hear a lot of people on the soup van used to be in juvenile detention.
We had a bloke on the couch a few years ago. He was a very good criminal lawyer, but he got into the drugs and did a few armed robberies. He ended up doing about 7 years behind bars. He said he came out and he was more depressed because nobody would give him a job. He couldn't practice law again. Bob Ansett gave him a job at the end, and you know, so he did okay. Violence, any violence for you, Steve?
Karen reminded me of a story. I met my wife on the van, and
wow.
She actually has devoted her life to homeless people and disabled people and bloody all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I feel a bit selfish next to her, but she was working in Hanover Centre, and you being a policeman would understand this story. There was a bit of violence in amongst the men in the Hanover Centre, and the policeman came in. Now, somehow one of the policemen lost his gun, and we don't quite know how it happened, but there's some code they call out, code 23 or whatever, and the other policeman called out code 23 because the gun was either dislodged or something had happened, and you know, and they were really scared. And anyway, within milliseconds, the building was just surrounded by police cars and police with their guns drawn, and my wife, who was in the middle of it somehow, I don't quite know, but all she remembered was some big policeman came in and reached over and just physically lifted her up in the air. She just remembers like going on a ride at Luna Park. All of a sudden she was evacuated from the middle, and you know, then eventually they found the gun or settled the situation down.
Interesting.
And,
Interesting. Now, there's so many stories, Kerry. We're just about to wind up, but where can people buy this book? And tell us the title of the book.
It's Soup Van, Stories Over a Polystyrene Cup.
Yeah.
And it's got a big polystyrene cup on the front, and you can order it through our website. It's created by the Rag and Bone Man Press, which is a 3-part organisation, myself, Hannah Cartmel and Dan Christie. And our website is www.ragandboneman.org.
Wow, thanks very much. I'm going to read it, and as soon as it comes out, because
we'd love people to buy it outside of the van, so they get an idea.
It's all about the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much for coming on, Karen and Steve. You're lovely people.
Thank you, Michael.
We'll have you on again with some further news, but congratulations on doing such a wonderful job, and congratulations, folks, for being such kind people and having such a good life. We'll see you next Monday night, and if you've got a story to share, why not check our Facebook site or just ring up and say g'day. Good night, love and best wishes.